Voice with the NRP. This and every Monday, 8:30 to 10 p.m. Join host Stephen Semanas and the NRP candidates as they amplify your voice.
Good evening. I'm Stevenson Manners, your host to Your Voice with the NRP. We're back after a pause for Culturama 51. It's August 11th, by the way. 2025 is speeding along. And first off, after the sabbatical, the professor, Dr. Patricia Bartlett. Good evening, Doc.
Good evening, Steve. And as usual, I would like to say good evening to our ardent listeners who are in radio and viewing land. And that, Steve, some special persons I have to, reach out to. And I'm going to call Montserrat first because I always leave Montserrat for last and then I get in trouble. Montserrat, good night. It's always a pleasure to have you in our company. And of course, we go over to St. Kitts, my cousin over there and my colleague. Good night to you guys down there. And in St. Croix, we have Julie and her husband. And, of course, Hugh Daly. These are some special people down there. My uncle and my aunt-in-law. Over there in St. John's, good night. I hope you guys are doing well. And, of course, I have my nephew in Florida. My sister is there as well, and she has recently joined us because I kept inviting her, and she just couldn't understand why is it I was inviting her into our politics. But she listened the last time, and she was quite impressed. And so she's with us tonight. And so I just want to reach out and say good night to my sister. Love you dearly. And going on to New York, we have our special people over there, Keith. Good night, Keith, and Annette, and Felix, Hazel. Twila is here and Leonia here, so I don't have to reach out so far to touch them. Over the weekend, the Culturama weekend, I was able to physically reach out and hug them and welcome them home, and we had quite a ball. And so for everyone else listening and viewing, it's a pleasure always. Good night.
And you guys are heading to New York City soon.
Well, Dr. Janice Daniel Hodge and her team. I'm not the one to disclose to the team. Let's keep people in suspense.
Okay. But you're going to the Big Apple. Meet and greet.
Our group, Dr. Janice Daniel Hodge and her team, would be going to New York. Yeah.
Okay, New York, Nivisions, Petitions, look out for the A-team coming your way.
That designation has been taken already. So I don't know what we necessarily want to use A-team again.
Taken by who?
By the SKNLP.
Oh, they call themselves the A-team?
Yes, they call themselves the A-team, so you're going to have to find some other designation.
You can say A+.
Well, okay then.
Mm-hmm. But the place is hot, very, very hot.
Yeah.
Putting on my shoes and sweat streaming down my hands. I'm told that Erin might be coming away this weekend. It's unusually warm weather.
Yes, and it is to be expected that we'll have an increase in the activities in the Atlantic now, and so it behoves us to all be prepared for whatever the eventuality is. My weatherman, whom I have a great respect for, has indicated to me that it is likely to turn northward before it gets to us. So it might come close enough in the vicinity of the northern Leeward Islands, but like I said, I have faith in him, and trust in God and faith in my weatherman that it would go north of us.
But if indeed it makes a turn, are you happy that we are as prepared? I know you were the first one on this program this season to talk about, and last year as well, about the level of preparedness. Have you gotten the impression we have slacked off a bit because we haven't been hit yet?
Well, I'm hoping that we have not become complacent. I'm hoping that all of the plans that we would have made at the beginning, that is June the 1st, I'm hoping that all we have to do really is just dress rehearsal, the day before. And I hope that we're all prepared. And I'm hoping that it would not be anything that we cannot withstand, because sometimes you can prepare as best as you can, but Mother Nature is of her own, mind. And so whatever it's thrown at us, I'm hoping that we'll be able to come out of it unscathed, because we really can't take anything. The Lord knows, and we can't take anything in this federation right now.
And of course, the leadership of the country is out of the country. Of course, we saw the premiere in the House of Assembly this morning, in the National Assembly this morning. But a bit of a strange release I found came out last night. I'm trying to find it. And I noticed so far this year that the releases coming out of the Premier's ministry have said very little. I haven't found it, but this one basically said that he is leaving the Federation today to host a tourism event. It didn't say he's going to Miami, New York, San Diego, and he says that he's going to take some personal time, so he'll be back in the Federation on the 21st. So that's 10 days. So, Patty, if everything happens, you're in charge, because Eric is tired. He's had Culturama, he's tired. So you're in charge if there's any disaster, God forbid, which would hit us during the Premier's absence.
Well, if Eric is not available, then Mr. Brand, I think, is an elected member, so
next
he
in
would
the
be
pecking
next.
order.
He would be next, yes. So I'm not close to being in charge as yet.
Okay.
It would have been ideal if we were in charge, but that's not how how the cookie crumbled, and so we have to deal with what we have. I sometimes I just don't want to pay too much attention to the machinations of the Premier. It's intended that way, just to obfuscate, as we like to use that word, and by now most of our viewers would have learned what that is. But he would make these, at least they put these press releases out, and it's up to us now to wonder, where did he go, and what, is our money really well spent? Because remember, Mayor Motley came, and in full disclosure, she would have said the number of travels that she would have done, and the benefit to the country at the end of the day, what she would have brought back. I don't know that we're likely to benefit much more from what the Premier has brought. Well, he has not really brought back much over, the 5, 7, how many years now? 8 years now? And so I don't know why he continues to spend, because if he's leaving on business, it means that we are probably picking up the tab, and then he's going to extend his leave and being hosted by, I understand, by one of his rich friends, and then he comes back on our dime, and that can't be right, Why doesn't he leave on his and do a little business for us on the side, And but that is his MO these days. It seems he just moves away. He doesn't want to deal with the realities on the ground here, and I do understand the pressures are on. But you don't just leave us for 10, 11 days. It's not like he was busy during Culturama doing anything worthwhile. But anyway, enough said about him.
Yeah, well, except to say that, of course, I said the release didn't give much information. But of course, the information always comes to us, and we hear he's gone to Martha's Vineyard. Do you know where that is?
I'm not speculating, because I know that's where rich people are, and so I guess
this is not speculation. We get information, and that's Martha's Vineyard. We're hearing in the Commonwealth of Massachusetts.
Yes, but that is not official release. I would,
well, if we don't get the official release,
I'll tell not to,
all right, so let's leave that there.
That's that, right?
All right. Now, Culturama 51 is in the books, and we want to get your thoughts on that. But before I get your thoughts on that, I just want you to listen to this.
51 is a number 2. 51 is a number 2. Don't treat it like a number 2. 51 is a number 2. 51 is a number 2. After 51 is 52.
Well, I don't know what you make on that. I know you are a calypso aficionada, and whatever it is, got tied tongue there. But when I heard that song before Culturama and during Culturama, I read it on 2 levels. Hollywood, the only 2-time, consecutive king of Culturama, basically said that Culturama 51 has been slighted. everybody know that a lot was put into Culturama 50 because of the very number that it is. But he gave the impression that the powers that be, Minister of Culture, the NIA, never seemed to pay much attention to Culturama 51. And then he went on to say, after 51 is 52. And then he said 2 is a number 2. Now, you know from childhood when we talk about 2, you know what we're talking about. I wouldn't defecate on radio, but basically, I think he was saying that comparatively speaking, we were serving up something less than palatable for the people of Nevis and the visitors who would come in for Culturama 51. What are your reflections? Ended last week Tuesday, a bit of a skirmish with a couple of fights. But your reflections on Culturama 51?
Well, Steve, we're in an environment now where you cannot criticize because our people are not mature enough to handle criticism. And whether it is constructive or otherwise, I think that there's a space, or there should be a space created for us to be able to exchange views that are not necessarily that align with each other. And so I want not to focus on what I have to say as if I were criticizing Culturama, but I know at the end of the night, people are still going to say that she'd criticize. Mm-hmm. But it started off on a bit of a low, and I think I made that observation when I was here, in that in town, the town was not dressed up as we are accustomed to. I mean, I think a little monies, or even some of the decorations from last year, probably should have been left over for, for us to use this year, because we spent quite a pretty penny last year on Culturama. So I saw no reason why we couldn't even invest in a few flags. I made that observation on I think a Facebook post, and there was a lady, I think she's from St. Kitts, and she was like, well, why don't you pay for the flags? And I'm like, I'm not in a position to pay for nothing other than my food and drink, you know? I mean, we have a Culturama committee, and they have a responsibility, to do certain things, prepare us for the event, hype the event, get us out, and let us spend. But you see, the thing is, the signals that were coming from the NIA were not necessarily signals that I think made people comfortable in wanting to spend their monies. Because if Culturama or the NIA couldn't spend $300, because for them, every time you speak about anything that has to be done, it's about, oh, there's no money. But I'm like, the Premier could have taken $300 out of his pocket and buy them, put some flags up, get them from the Chinese place and put them up so that it seems like something is happening in town. Incidentally, when I came into town tonight, I saw some lights up. Mind you, it wasn't a lot, but a few lights were on, and previously during Culturama I didn't see that. And I'm like, we usually dress up for our visitors. I mean, that is tradition. Somebody come into your house, you put out the best curtains. That is Nevis culture. And so I was quite disappointed that we didn't invest in that, as minimal as it was, that, for us to be able to get people all hyped up. And so I think they dropped the ball as it relates to that. When then the government started to complain and say, well, we don't have any money for this and we don't have any money for that, that was a signal to our people, I think. Albeit, maybe it was not intentional, but you have to be careful because words, are powerful coming from the top. And so when people feel that government is retracting, as it relates to the finances, likewise, we are going to take the cue from them. And so I'm like, watching, I'm like, well, if the NIA not spending and they're the ones who have the coffers, why should I spend? And I think a lot of people got into that mode of, I think, not wanting to spend the little resources that they had. And mind you, remember, we were just coming off of the music festival in St. Kitts, where people would have spent $175 for one night just to be on the grounds. And after that, we had cricket. And there was cricket in St. Kitts, and when you see, and I think one night, the people from here, the NIA, I understand they had a booth, a VIP booth at the cricket in St. Kitts, and that was going on the same time. I think they had Panorama, the same night they had Panorama. And I'm like, come on, people, make better decisions. How could you be in St. Kitts celebrating or watching cricket while Culturama is going on in Nevis? What does that say to the people here on the ground who are already not hyped up, who are already not feeling the promotion that should have been behind, Culturama? And so I thought that was a bit tasteless. I don't think that they should have done that. You didn't have to go. You didn't have to go to the cricket. You didn't have to go down and have a VIP booth and then claim that you don't have money to buy flags to decorate. That doesn't make any sense to me. Everywhere you go, this CCM, NIA, they establish a space for themselves, to revel in that they establish these VIP exclusive zones, and people are seeing this kind of spending. But the things that are important to the masses of us, things are not being spent on us to accommodate us. So if you go to the Culturama city or Culturama, what you call up there, the complex
and village,
you're going to find that there's an area that is covered and that is reserved for VIP, once you can spend hundreds of dollars. But the ordinary patron who goes there every year, they still don't have a cover over their head. They still have to walk with their umbrellas. And you walk with the umbrella, if the rain is hard enough, you cover your head, but by the time the rain is over, your backside is wet, know? And so I find that we are not really looking after our people as well as we could, and include them and make them feel comfortable in the spaces that we all should be enjoying. And I think it's about time that this CCM government change the direction in which they're going, because establishing all these VIPs and not looking after the people and making sure the people are comfortable is a no-win situation. And that's why sometimes they probably have to cheat at the polls, because people are not going to vote for those kind of things. You can't be treating me badly now and come the next couple of months and say that you want me to vote for you. So maybe that is one of the reasons why Indivisions are really signing off of CCM at this point in time, and people generally don't go out. Maybe that had to do with the low attendance we had at a lot of the shows as well, because people just don't feel in that mood. We have to create, the mood. We have to create the mood, to get people out. And so I think Culturama could have done with some more promotion. I understand that there might have been some changing over of the guards as it relates to the administration of Culturama this year, in that they had a new executive officer or chairman, whatever that is. And so I don't think yet that people have that level of confidence that, but they made an attempt. It was not something that we really want to be rehashing over and over, because those iterations don't really, speak well for the Culturama. And the thing is, I want Culturama to be a success. It is our thing, I cannot endorse the notion that our culture is evolving, because Culturama, that's not what Culturama was intended for. It wasn't about accommodating masquerade that didn't wear the regalia that is associated with that particular sport. Culturama, I think, was meant for us to focus on the way things used to be for us. It is not a carnival. So I think we are kind of moving away from that. On the streets for Parade Day, I think, was the most anemic, response that I would have seen to a Culturama parade.
It was done by 4.
Well, we didn't have any participation in the troops as we normally would, and we didn't have any participation by the general public, the onlookers at the side of the roads, and so I was totally disappointed. I said I was going to go in town, because this is a day that you would go and you see all the people you haven't seen for quite a while, and all of our, people from the diaspora who would come back. Mind you, it probably was not a lot this year compared to previous years, but we missed out on those kind of things. And so I want us to go back to what the focus of Culturama should be. And it really should be focusing on the arts, promoting the arts, how things used to be. We are not saying that after Culturama you must go out and use a pit latrine, but there's nothing wrong with highlighting where we've come from. And I think that is what this focus is all about. I've been to places where the whole traditions in certain areas very high. I went to Taiwan, and you go to this particular place, and the traditional dances, they don't try to change them. These are things that are set down from generation to generation. It's passed down, and so there's a history behind it, and people try to preserve that, because that's what Culturama, I think, initially, that is what the concept to me was all about, preserving what we had. I'm not saying for the rest of the year you can't be singing your whatever else you sing, whether it's jazz or, but for us, there are certain things that, I think we should preserve, because it makes it, or it should have been a unique festival in summer, not the same carnival kind of thing, because really, when you look at it, we can't really compete with the people who are having carnivals. We saw Antigua having carnival on the same time, and Willa, these people,
Grenada.
right, and so the competition is out there, and I think it's for us to establish ourselves away from the ordinary. And so Culturama, I think we need to get back to the drawing board. We need to redefine what we think the objectives ought to be, and then move forward. I'm not going to rate Culturama, because like I said, it is our thing, and I'm not going to downgrade what we have. I think more effort should be placed in it next year to make sure that we do not get back to the same level, because this level is a precipitous drop-off for me. I don't like it. The vendors, I was particularly moved, because our vendors, I know the vendors, some of them would have put their last bit into making sure that they were well stocked for the Culturama, and for them to just be wasting food and have drinks there that they have to maybe carry over for a long period of time, hold on to. My heart, it felt heavy for those people, because I know it's not easy in this environment. The economy is bad, and I really feel it for those persons. As it relates to the end of Culturama, maybe people were frustrated why they ended up fighting at the end. Why not fight at the beginning, but people fight at the end, and maybe they were frustrated and just, things didn't go their way. I don't know what the reason was. That was an unfortunate incident, and I'm hoping that, it's not repeated going forward. But we need, as a people, to be able to conduct ourselves, a little better, particularly our women folk. I want to appeal to our women folk to get back to decorum, observing decorum when you're out there in the public space. Because these things follow you. If I were in the complex and I saw two women fighting, and I were in a position to give one of them a job, and they came, I might think twice about that, And so people have to be mindful of their behavior in the public spaces. Plus, what is it you're saying to our youths? This is not really good behavior for us to. Well, I don't condone it for one. I don't know who individuals are, mind you. So it's not anything personal, a personal jab at anyone, from one thing. But in wrapping up on the Culturama fiasco that we had, all I would like to say is that for next year, I'm hoping that those people who can join troops or can form troops, please let us do what we can to do that. Our girls, our young women, let us go out and participate. There's a future there for us. Once you get on the stage, the door is open for you to explore. I think in Jamaica, the Miss World contestant, she is a doctor. So let us not think that we are beyond that, above that. There's potential out there, and we need good representation on the international scene. And our women, I think we have it. We just need to be able to feel comfortable in expressing ourselves in public. And I think, I would like to put this out there and encourage our young women, to make yourselves available. We shouldn't have to go to St. Kitts to find 5 girls, because we have some beautiful, intelligent women right here in Nevis, and who would qualify, for that pageant. So please, not that I'm saying that we should exclude Kittitians, because I'm all about including. That has always been my mantra. Let us make sure that we mend fences and we reach out and include everyone, because we are one people. And so it's not to say we're excluding people in St. Kitts, but we encourage people in Nevis, to come out. We know about the culture in Nevis, which is slightly nuanced, but be the same in St. Kitts, They do things a little different. They cook their goat water a little different. They cook their dumpling and, saltfish a little different. So let us highlight, the way that we use, our spices and stuff like that, and how we cook. Like I said, we're not promoting Three Stones again, but, if Culturama is a good time that we could show how it used to be done. And so we need all of us to get on board Make sure that you participate in the folklore, drama. Poets in the Square is my favorite, of course. Not necessarily because
You started it.
not that, and it's not about that. It's just that I enjoy poetry, and so I would like to encourage those of us who can write, to write. And even if you yourself think that you cannot go and deliver, you can always get the young people involved in that, because I think the stage was set this year, and I think they included the elderly, which we used to do in my time with Poets in the Square, and they included the young people. And, I went to the Quiet Poets in the Square, and I had a good time, and so I want to encourage us all to participate next year. Don't worry let us not continue about this people boycotting thing, because the truth is, none of us really wanted to go out, because either we didn't have money to spend, or we just didn't have the vibe, but just wasn't there. So it wasn't about people NRP boycotting, because as far as I'm concerned, there are a lot of CCM people didn't go out. Because if what we saw in the complex would have been a reflection of just NRP people, just CCM people attending those shows, trust me, it means that CCM might as well go home now, because the attendance wasn't good. And so if it's only CCM people went to the park, it means that you have a lot of people out there who don't support the government. That is what they were trying to suggest. That is only, that is ridiculous, that's ludicrous. I don't think that it had anything whatsoever to do with the politics. I was particularly perturbed, though, when I saw one of the ministers, on Juve morning, and CCM shut, and, come on, man, leave the CCM shut at home for Culturama. Leave the NRP shut at home for Culturama. Let us just come out in a white shirt, whatever other color shirts, Let us not make public statements, political statements in the middle of a festival that ought to be something that, brings us together.
Now, you spoke about the preservation of culture, and you went back to the original ideals, former Johnson and Calvin, Cabo Howell, etc. In 2007, the Joseph Parry administration put in place the Neves Development and the Cultural Foundation. That body was supposed to underpin the preservation and the development of culture. Now, we had this season Abernathy Libert going out after 26 years and Swain Evelyn coming in, and nobody expected a miracle from him, with all frankness. But how well is the NCDF working to achieve the goals which the NRP set out in 2007?
Well, I don't know. I'm not, in a position to rate, performances relative to that. What I would like to say, though, see, the transition, it might have been a rough transition for the person who took over from this year. And that is one of the weaknesses I find in this CCM administration, in that, you don't have anybody a succession plan in any department, in any, if you look around in any ministry, you find people leave and then a vacuum is created, and, I don't like that, and I think, this poor planning really is a reflection of that. Had he been an understudy for a while, maybe, things might have been different, but I'm not aware that he would have been studying Abernathy for any period of time. I don't know if maybe he was there last year, and, I don't know, but I didn't feel it. I didn't feel that, and so I think, sometimes people just throw you off in the deep end and think that you could swim, but some people are good swimmers, and some people just float. And maybe he floated for the first year. Let's hope that he would swim next year.
Doesn't Culturama need rebranding, though? I mean, I'll frankly tell you, the dumbest thing I've heard is people referring to a festival as C50, C51. Those are nondescript titles. We've known it for 51 years as Culturama. And to reduce Culturama to a C is diminishing the festival. Now look around the region. St. Kitts has Sugar Mass. So the theme is, it's sweet. We've been Sugar City for years. We're giving you Sugar Mass. St. Vincent is giving you Vincy Mass. Grenada, Spice Mass. Don't we have to rebrand our festival? And in that rebranding, haven't we got to cater to the younger demographic?
No.
You don't think so? Because what I'm reading on social media, that the successive the successful festivals around the region.
We are not a carnival.
All
We
right.
are not a carnival. We need to go back to calling it Culturama. People are expecting culture.
Mhm.
And people are expecting a festival. So for me, I have no issue with the name Culturama. Culturama 25, 55, Culturama, whatever number you want to call it.
Not C51
But
though. No,
okay,
that's-
okay. Mind you, maybe C51, maybe it was a move to appease, the young people because they use abbreviated things nowadays. But I'm saying, call it what it is. It is Culturama. It's meant to be Culturama. People should come expecting a cultural explosion. So, as it relates to rebranding, we probably have some work to do, yes. And so I have no expertise in that area. I may have a few, ideas, but let's see what happens next year. And I'm hoping that there would be a shift. And so when the call is made for people to be a part of the Culturama, what I call it, the Culturama committee. I don't know what they call it this year, if they had a committee as such. But when the call is made, let us, wane. Let us wane then. Until then, I just want to put Culturama on hold and move on to other things.
Okay, we'll take a break. And when we come back, we'll talk about the NIA debt crisis. Let's take a break.
Your voice with the NRP. This and every Monday, 8:30 to 10 p.m. Join host Stephen Semanas and the NRP candidates as they amplify your voice.
And we're back. And your special guest tonight, Dr. Patricia Bartlett. And we're reminding you, it's going to remind them they can call. And here's a caller. Good evening. Caller, welcome to Your Voice with the NRP.
Mr. Manas, good night.
Good night. Good night.
Dr. Bartlett, good night.
Good night, Monsrat. How are you doing?
Yeah, me hear you shut up first. But listen,
You're breaking up.
the last time you were here, right? The kind of hear one echo come back. Are you hear me good?
Yeah, there's an echo, yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. The last time you let me got a headache. But with, when you start, you may tell people for hold them call, and you may got a lot of things to say. And then to the end, when some call me come in, Mr. Manor, so I not gonna overtime. But me got a headache, so me no me call in.
Okay, well, welcome.
Yeah. So let me say belated birthday, calling only now me give me belated birthday to you.
Well, thank you. I had a wonderful
Yeah.
time. Thank you.
And we want to say belated birthday to Sister C.
Mm-hmm.
Yes. But Mr. Manners and Dr. Bartlett, I mean, for Culturama for the first time, that one female monarch. I mean, I hear nobody congratulate her.
Yes.
Ye-
Yeah, we should have, Pat.
Yes.
that one slipped.
An oversight on my part.
Yeah. First monarch
Yeah,
in
but
51
not-
years. Female
So
monarch.
I alone, because I notice nowadays me hang out a lot with the premier, right?
Oh yeah.
Right. And not even the one congratulation come. And then me no hear congratulation from the other two programs. So some you say, well, now you got a female monarch. Why the ladies are not supposed to get on the way? So let me appeal to the ladies. Quiet down and no stay nervous me with that kind of behavior.
Mm-hmm.
So me go come back. Me go listen to you and come back.
Well, let me tell you, in the final segment tonight,
Thanks.
we're going to talk fair share report, IMF
Okay, no-
report. So you got to
no
weigh.
problem.
You got to weigh in on that.
No problem at all.
For sure.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, we should have.
Well, we probably should have, but then we will get into trouble because we have to, acknowledge the winners for all the other shows, and we might have been here for a longer time, than
all right.
we had it intended to spend on Culturama.
Well, the party leader has been making posts and putting some of the lyrics of Empress lyrics on her Facebook page, and of course she represented Nevis
in
Anguilla, and the 19-year-old female from Antigua One. So women going places all around the Caribbean.
Yeah, well, I'm proud of our women folk, but it's like I said, an oversight on my part. Probably should have, singled her out, seeing it's our first time, and but better late than never.
Yes.
Congratulations, Madame Monarch.
Okay, so the NIA death crisis, that's something you want to speak to.
Yeah, that is quite serious, and that probably is what would have put a damper, on the activities that we've had, for Culturama too. Because when we look, and I know we have spoken about the death crisis, numerous times before, we continue to, because things are just getting worse, it seems. Last year, the report was that at the end, as of October, the end of October 2024, the total public debt for Nevis stood at $545.4 million. And that is quite concerning, because with a population in Nevis of just 13,182 persons, it means that each resident owes at least $41,000, in terms of our commitment to the repayment of this debt over time. But how did we get here? We have to ask ourselves, how did we get here? And I don't want to go back to just putting all the responsibility on the previous premier, who has already exited. But what the data would suggest to us is that for the past 10 years that NRP would have been in the wilderness and CCM would have been at the helm, it's only once we ever had a budget that cleared a deficit. Once. And I think that was in 2015. I think it was in 2015. That was the only time we had a surplus budget. Every other time, it would have been a deficit. And these deficits, they just wipe off and move on to the next year. They accumulate, they add on to whatever we would have had before. And so over time, we, as the old people say, it creep upon us, And so it's been creeping, and it is now a problem, for us. But if we can focus, though, on just the Brantley era, that seemed to be a problem. That seemed to be a very grave problem for the people of Nevis. Because during 2018, and I'm not even going to say 2017, because he just took office in 2017, December, was it? December. From 2018 up to 2023, we're not including 2024 yet, and we know that we had a deficit in 2024. But of course, we're not going to get the actuals out, and I always tell people, cautiously, we have to wait until 2025 to see the actuals in 2024. That is always the way it is. But during that period of time, from 2018 to 2023, the recurrent account, meaning the account where you make payments and you take monies, your revenue, and it is constantly changing. We have had a deficit that has accumulated to 184. If you every year you add on the deficit that Brantley had the year before, every year it shows you. And I think I want to share, for the benefit of the listening audience, just a little bit, because I don't want people to think that we're just pulling out these numbers. This came from the audit report for 2023. And what it showed is that in 2018, the deficit was $21 million. That is what Brantley gifted us in his first year. $21 million. In 2019, it was $21 million again. Mind you, remember that COVID year started in 2019, but the effects didn't really hit us until 2020. So there's no reason why, we should have continued like that. Because previous to that, Mr. Army would have had deficits like $10 million or less. And then you $10 million, 5.7 million, going that way. In 2014, 2015 is when he had this slight, surplus. And after that, it has just gone downhill. And I'm talking about in 2020, we had a 23 million deficit. I understand, and I give him, leniency on that year because we had COVID. By 2021, we were down to 34.9, almost $35 million deficit. That's the difference between the monies that he take in and the monies that he spend. So he brings a budget and say we're going to make $100, and then he spends 139. So we're over by 39 million. Okay, so in 2022, it got even worse. It was $41 million. The difference, that is a deficit. And in 2023, it was 41. So we see that progressively, the deficits have been getting larger and larger under Mr. Brantley. And it's like, why?
Couldn't the argument be made, though, because COVID was not confined to 2020 alone? There could have been some spillover into 21.
Yes. Of course. And I said I'm going to give him a little leniency in that little period there. But it continues to go down. When the economy started to pick up already, you should not still be going in the negative direction. You should have been stabilizing, at least trying to reverse, not getting deeper and deeper and deeper. You remember what the third Prime Minister said? The more money he gave to Nevis, the deeper they came in the red. And that was specifically talking about the period that he had to endure dealing with Mr. Brantley. So I think this spells a propensity, and what I mean is that he seemed to can't control himself at this point. He must just spend bad, because that is bad spending has gotten us to this point. Because when I said that we were going to talk about the debt crisis, I already made the point that debt itself is not necessarily a bad thing, because a lot of countries, that's how they grow, by debt. But you have to leverage your debt for development. You cannot be putting yourself into debt just to pay exorbitant salaries and those kind of things. And so we're going to get to what the bad spending is about in a minute.
Okay.
But just to say here that while we were spending over that period of time $184 million, and that probably would have been, we probably would have been taking loans to cover those. On the other hand, the capital account, where they would take loans to the capital projects, would they only manage to raise $77 million in loans to do the capital projects. So you see where we're going with this. You see where the priority lies, not in the development, because capital projects spell development. The other part, the current expenditure, you're going to see is spent on looking good and feeling good, and that is not good enough. The IMF would have made the observation that we needed to have a fiscal discipline instilled here in the NIA. We shouldn't be spending more than we take in, and we did that every year under Brantley, including the leap year. There was no year that we would have said, well, not this year. Every year. And so this also prompted the IMF to say in one of the Article 4 consultation that they would have done, one of the recommendations that they made is that we should legislate fiscal rules for the NIA. No. You're talking about they're trying to get it entrenched so that we don't have any wiggle room. We must conform to a particular way of doing business, except when we have an emergency, a natural disaster. And so that doesn't bode well, for this NIA or the CCM NIA, because it is obvious that the loans are not easy to come by anymore, because you would see in the budget over time that the NIA would budget for loans for particular projects. But by the end of the year, they sometimes fall short by 63% because they just cannot raise the capital through loans because they're not loan worthy. They're not credit worthy at this point because there are times that they would have not even paid the interest that they said they would have been budgeting for. They had to forego the interest payment on some of these loans because things are hard. And it is obvious, like I said, that if we don't stop spending bad, and the third prime minister would have said that, he's a bad spender. But it is obvious if we don't, then Nevis is going to be even in a deeper barrel of, whatever the Calypsonian said, as he referenced Culturama. The debt, like I said, is not inherently bad, but during 2028 to 2023, they said that they were going to raise $140 million for loans, for capital projects, and they only managed 77. So you see that when government not spending, then there's not the money there in the economy for the ordinary man, to get, paid. And so I've been hearing reports back from vendors who have had business with the NIA that they've been short paid. Like you put in an invoice for $30, and someone would call you and say, come for this 25 mine, because that is the amount that you're going to get now. You probably might have to wait in line again when the cycle comes around, probably until the next 5 months again before you could get the next $5, And that is not projecting any kind of confidence in our people to go out and spend. And so the economy is lagging just because of the debt crisis that the NIA is in. Now, the audit report for 2018 to 2023 highlights some overspending by the Premier's office in particular, primarily as it relates to production and marketing, hosting and entertainment. And I want people to listen clearly about the things that the Premier between 2018 and 2023 have been overspending on, while capital projects have been laid aside, or some not even started. And so we have the areas of overspending, and let me please make note of it. We have hosting and entertainment. We have production and marketing. We have rental of assets. So you see all the buildings that they're abandoning, government buildings, and moving on to other buildings to rent from people. That is carrying up our overall cost of doing business in government. And so it is costing us, the expenditure is going through the roof. And of course there comes the travel and subsistence and the wages. Now these are things that the audit report has flagged, not Patricia Bartlett. I went in and I saw them and they're flagged. And so I'm just sharing it with people who are less likely to go and search through these documents. When it comes to hosting and entertainment, and I think that this bears a little expansion, we must elaborate a little bit on that. The hosting and entertainment in 2018, they budgeted for $40,000. They ended up paying $90,000. In 2019, under the same line item, hosting and entertainment, we're under hosting and entertainment until I say otherwise. In 2019, hosting and entertainment budgeted for $150. Guess how much, Steve? Give an educated guess as to how much we ended up paying in 2019.
$200,000.
$200,000. I might have said, well, it ain't too bad. But the actual amount paid would have been, or spent, was $634,000. And you only budgeted for $150.
Entertainment.
Entertainment, hosting and entertainment. Remember that next year would have been election year. So they start to wine and dine on our dime, on the people's money. So make note of that. Then in 2022, you realize what's happening here, another election year, we had a budget of $225,000, and because you were so way off, I ain't even going to ask you to guess this one.
You better
They
not.
ended up paying or expending $489,000. Unconscionable. Now let's look at production and marketing. This is something that will make the premier look good. They go out and they take all these videos. You see them floating around, and they get these people coming from overseas and pay them tons of money. So in 2018, they budgeted for 100,000. They expended 117. Overspend. 2019, they budgeted for 120. Election year coming up. They spent 261. 2020, they budgeted for 120, but they paid 144. 2021, they budgeted for 130. They spent 187. Now, this is, I used the word unconscionable before, and I want to just reuse it again for emphasis. But let me just tell you what the summary or the conclusion that the auditor would have made. The auditor couldn't skip that. The auditor said, and this is in 2019, the Office of the Premier was allotted a budget of $4.6 million, which comprised, and it goes on to tell you whatever the thing. Now, I'm going to skip all of that with preamble, and we go to where they say there were a few instances where the budget was overspent on the object code level. Hosting and entertainment vote was allocated 150 and incurred $633.682 $1,000 we're talking. For the past year, this object code, which you're talking about, hosting and entertainment, has exceeded its budget more than twice that was budgeted. Let me read that again. For the past years, that is written in 2019, making reference to 27 and coming back. He said the object code has exceeded its budget more than twice that which was budgeted in 2017. There was 40 allocated, 90 spent, which is approximately 125.3%, more than the budgeted figure. This is just for emphasis because I would have given these numbers already. In 2018, the budget was 80,000, and the actual expenditure incurred total $623.840,000, or 679.8%. You hear what I said?
I'm
They
listening.
overspent by 679. Let's round it off, call it 680%. Now, who in their right mind could run a country like this and expect that this could be sustainable? This is madness. This is madness. And we have to put a check on it. It's about time that we did. Because this party, the CCM party, the present CCM party, seem to be focusing just now on looking good and enjoying themselves doing it. All these VIP spaces that they have created is reflected right here. And our people have to end up paying all this money back. And we're just talking about what is overspent. There are other categories, and this is just the Premier's office. There are other categories where you can see that some ministries have made an attempt. As a matter of fact, it seems like they have been sacrificed. The work that they have to do in the other ministries, the people's business, to make sure that agriculture takes off, to make sure that tourism does what it should do in this economy. Those ministries have been shelved. They've been put on pause because they can't do anything. They're crippled. So as it is now, monies are just being expended just to keep the staff on. But there's no money for capital projects. There's no money to develop the place. I'm like, why are we in this space with I think they're just, right now, just taking up space. Because they're not producing, because there's nothing in the kitty to stimulate growth. And so, I've said before, and I'm going to say it again, the Bastille has been complicit in this dilemma or this crisis that has been created in Nevis, because they've sat in Bastille and they have the ability to do something about it. The IMF has flagged it. And I'm almost sure it probably, is an issue as it relates to the World Bank report. At some point in time, we'll get to that. But what we are seeing in Bastia, and I'm going to get a lot of flack from my colleagues in St. Kitts, but instead of them saying to the Premier, stop, turn around, they're aiding and abetting. That $20 million that the Prime Minister would have signed off on at National Bank for the Premier to get his hand on to do some project that he's not ready for as it relates to the airport expansion, that he can't justify the spending of these monies at this point in time. The Prime Minister should know the predicament in which we are in Nevis, because he has seen it shown up in the IMF report. As a matter of fact, the situation in Nevis is a drag on the entire, economy of St. Kitts and Nevis. Because when you start talking about fiscal rules, you're talking about your debt to GDP ratio. Now, if you look at what we are doing, our debt is almost half of what the GDP is for the St. Kitts and Nevis. And the GDP is really just the gross domestic product. That's what GDP stands for. And all that is a measure of the goods and services that we produce in our space in St. Kitts and Nevis. And so what the recommendation is, and what the Eastern Caribbean Currency Union has set as a target or a benchmark for all of us in the Eastern Caribbean, who use the EC dollar, is that we should not let our debt to GDP ratio go beyond 60%. Because to do so means that when you really have an emergency and you want to expand the economy, we want to do capital projects, you can't do it because you're already at the point where people don't have confidence that you'll be able to pay back this money. And that is the dilemma in which Nevis is now, in that the Premier can't even get a loan from a local bank on his own standing, or on the standing of the NIA, maybe on his personal account. Maybe he could get it. He could get $20 million maybe on his personal account. But the NIA account right now is not being facilitated, not by National Bank, and we're at the point of breaking at the Bank of Nevis across the street there. And so this squandermania must come to an end. And it means that the Premier should now be crafting a way out. He should be sitting down seriously with some economists, and I know that he would have paid one handsomely. One was at an ambassador at some point, I think. He's an economist. He almost sounds like he's a Trump economist, based on what I've seen on the internet. But notwithstanding, we need people who understand the economy to help us to create a path out. We need a pathway out of this dilemma. The IMF has suggested that maybe the central bank should work with the NIA, and they do give technical advice for free, because that's what they're committed to. That's part of their work. And I'm hoping that the Premier would have engaged them now and not wait until further down the road, because the time for intervention is now. We cannot wait any longer in terms of addressing this debt crisis that we have on Nevis, because our people are already struggling. We're already seeing, the cracks. And this cannot go unattended for much longer. Because, Steve, the Constitution gives certain people the authority to intervene and save us from ourselves, because sometimes you have to save some people from themselves, And the Premier needs to be rescued. The NIA, the CCM NIA needs to be rescued, because they're on a pathway that is going to take us to, I think, declaring bankruptcy sooner rather than later here in Nevis. I don't know that I've heard of within recent times, government going broke in the region, even though some, they're indebted, highly indebted. They don't get to that point where they don't have access, or people denying them access to loans that could help them to deliver. Look at the situation with geothermal. We can't even put in a dime. So it means that now the Premier is at a point where he just has to sacrifice that. He has to give it up So he has to give it over to the federal government, and like, you take it and give us what you think,
Fair
is
share.
fair.
Fair share.
Yeah, and so we'll get to that. But in the Constitution in section 111, that's 111, just after 110, which deals with how you share the fair share, it speaks to grants and loans. And it says, if I may, in section 111, subsection 1, he said the GG, or that means the Governor General, may make rules providing that, one, section A, the existing or the contingent liability of the administration in this case is the NIA, for servicing its public debt shall not exceed such limits as may be prescribed. And B, the Minister responsible for finance shall be informed in advance of any proposal that the administration should obtain any grant or loan monies. And it goes on. So it says that the power is there, and mind you, in concurrence with the Premier, the Prime Minister, they can propose how we're going to manage this debt, but in concurrence with the Premier. You can't do it without the concurrence of the Premier. But it sets out, like I said, there is an avenue for us to get things in check over here. Because NIP can't stop the CCM NIA. We can only talk. We can only say how deep we think that we are in. Because when the auditor speaks to what the debt is, they said the disclosed debt. So inherently, what that is suggesting is that we probably have some undisclosed debts, and I am inclined to accept that we do have some undisclosed debts. And so when we hear $454.5 million in debt in 2024 October, by now it probably exceeding 600 million, because we have not been able to do anything to generate revenue to be able to set aside some of those loans, and so we're struggling out there. But the people in position to do something about it are too. We should not be, Dr. Drew should not be helping Mr. Brantley to take Nevis further into debt and not find a way out. Those are the issues that they should have been collaborating on. How do you get Nevis out of this? Because the IMF would have suggested that you should work with Nevis, and give them their fair share and help them get over this hunch.
All right, let's take this. Good evening. Welcome to Your Voice.
Yes. So I love to hear politics talk, man. Me love when facts, not just one talk. Me love when facts come on the boom. So that's why I love to listen to these ladies and gents.
Thank you.
Now, Dr. Bartlett.
Yes.
You hear me?
I'm hearing you, yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. Now, you point out one of the debt, like renting
properties,
buildings and so, because the government offices
all over the place.
Like government places and gone to private. So
Yes.
that's a part of some of the debt, right?
Correct.
Okay. But, and then you say from the Premier office, it come like entertainment and so forth and so.
Yes.
Okay, so you think that MSR would a part of this, some of this that, so the MSR would encounter some of these that?
It probably is. Probably.
Okay.
But that has not been explicitly stated in the auditor's report.
Oh, okay.
Because these
Okay,
people
so,
hide, sometimes they hide the activities that, they do, they just put a blanket over them and call a figure, but, you don't know specifically. When you look for the line item, sometimes you don't specifically find what it's for.
Yeah. You see, me have to question that when we hang out with the Premier, that me can't dig, forget the proper answers.
Well, he won't be here Wednesday, and he won't be here, I think, the Wednesday after that. So you won't be able to hang out with him for a while.
He'll be back eventually.
Me pile him up.
You pile him up. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, listen, Dr. Bartlett. Now, capital on the other side or capital we sitting at this side.
Repeat?
The capital debt, because me may concentrate on like, okay, see the hospital, see the wing, and see now bring back in nothing.
Right.
You get the point?
Yeah.
Yes.
You spend out X amount, and they now bring back in nothing.
Right.
So the debt and all that now, a pile up the debt and all too, right or wrong?
Right.
Exactly. But you see, Dr. Bartlett, me think I need to still. Me don't think that everybody listen to the you can't go to salary for motion, but you know how we can vote. All right?
Unfortunately.
But me not think like every new vision still listen to that kind of thing. Because a lot of people they love hullabaloo. In other words, some don't really want the facts, you know. Some just want something just to run with, but when they start to get them the facts and so then back out, they don't really want to hear, right?
Right.
So we still think that marketing is a very good thing, and the truth about it, the way how me understand, if everybody should have understand the way how me understand, well then they say upon go track. But then I know everybody is gonna understand like how me understand. You get the point of the
Yes, we got you.
Right. So still, if you can come down and simplify if like see how them on other program they just say about the mahogany boys. Me not really hit the mahogany boys.
Mahogany boys. Yeah.
Okay.
Right. But what may get from that is that if nothing there for you create something just to give them something for do. And then if that they not really not the public interest for grow the country and so forth and so. All in something supposed to be this is.
I got you.
You know? Okay.
Yeah.
So let me listen to a little bit more and we'll come back here.
Thank you. And Dr. Bartlett, it's 22 minutes
Okay.
to 10.
Thank you for the intervention.
And I know you don't want to do too much overtime at all, and we got to get to fair share sometime.
No, and I just wanted to respond, you know, I just to let the caller know. I've tried. I had a rough day, to be quite honest with you, and I really would have liked to be able to say $100 plus $12 and all them kind of things, but I didn't get to it because, you know, I had an emergency to deal with today. So I've just been, you know, kind of winging it tonight. Yeah. And so, but the thing is, our people are 98% literate. And I don't think that there's anything that I would have said tonight that is probably, you know, beyond their level of comprehension. But I can very well, you know, because all we are saying is that the CCMNA, and I made the point, you know, in conclusion, that they've just been using money to spend on looking good and having a good time. Mm-hmm. And so what they have been overspending on, their priorities are not right. And what they have been overspending on have not moved the needle as it relates to the development of Nevis. And that is a basic point that I think I just try to bear out with the data that is there. But what I particularly like to do is to bring the data to our people. If you hear it first time and you didn't catch it the second time because it is on YouTube, it is on Facebook, the second time when you go, just listen, because what I'm saying is nothing complicated. All I'm saying is that the dance can't pay for the lights. You're spending more than you're making.
Caller, welcome.
Good evening, Steve, and good evening, Dr. Bartlett.
Good evening.
Good evening.
Dr. Bartlett, I think I like the point you made earlier, that the problem is not debt. The problem is what you do with it, how you use it. So I'm just asking the question aloud. Have you seen where the government has invested in agriculture heavily to ensure we have a an improvement in food security and by extension a reduction in the food import bill? Have you seen any heavy investment in education in terms of technology or tertiary education and any other activity which is intended to grow the economy? Because that is the fundamental problem. You have to invest in growing the economy, and along with that must come a qualitative improvement in the human resources of the country. So I'm just trying, those three areas interest me: agriculture, human resources, and any kind of investment to create employment and to fire the economy. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you for the question. You might have missed the point that I made earlier because I was just rambling on, I imagine. But I made the point, and it bears repeating, that all of the other ministries outside of the Ministry of Finance, which the Premier, comes under the Premier's ministry, they've been cutting back. They've been cutting back on the programs that they can deliver. So they have compromised on making improvements in agriculture. They have no advancement in agriculture because the monies that are being expended now are barely enough to cover salaries and wages. So people are just there, putting along and not doing anything that could move agriculture to the next level. For us to be able to reach to the level of food security that we have been talking about for the longest while. First was that we were going to cut in agriculture. The objective was that we were going to cut the imports of food imports by 25%, or agricultural imports by 25% by 2025. Now 2025 is here, and we have not managed to reach that goal. And so what has happened is that they have now rescheduled the timing, and they're saying, okay, we should get there by 2030. No, nothing is in the budget, or they cannot spend like they are intended to spend, because everybody has now gotten the memo that you have now to reel back on the spending. So if we would have budgeted last year, well, for 2025, $10 million for agriculture, they're saying no, cut those programs because we only have monies to pay for your salaries and your wages. So everything else has to be cut. I heard someone say that everything else is cut by 30%, whatever expenditure is cut by 30%. But it seems to me now that they have retracted to even deeper cuts than that at this point in time, after we would have gotten the report from the CBI, which obviously is in trouble and was subsidizing to some extent the activities here on Nevis. And likewise, in the ministry, and the audit report would have reflected that. In all of the ministries, they have budgeted for a certain amount, but they have spent less than was budgeted. Not because of the discipline or the fiscal discipline that the Premier boasts that they've now reached, but because there's just no money to spend. If you budget for a particular program and you think it's going to spend, you take $10 for us to be able to reach these particular objectives, and the objectives are not met, but you stop spending. It is not about fiscals. It's not anything about your fiscal ability as it relates to your capacity to spend prudently. It has to do with the fact that you're broke, and that is what has happened. The government in Nevis, the NIA, is broke, and at every town hall, when people ask questions, or anytime a question is asked as it relates to the expenditure in any particular ministry, the response of, I think that is something that they've practiced by now. The response is always, well, we can't do that because monies are not available, or we are doing it on a case-by-case basis. As it comes in, money comes in, we spend it accordingly. And so it seems as if there isn't even a priority list at this point in time as it relates to the projects that should be given priority in terms of advancing agriculture, or in terms of advancing tourism, or any other major industry in Nevis. And so we're just right now in survival mode. I heard one of the ministers once said that during COVID, that the Premier was supposed to be applauded because he managed to stabilize he managed to stabilize the economy in Nevis. by whatever interventions he had credited to the Premier. Now we're seeing reflected in the budget or in the audit report that all those years would have given you some deficits, meaning that they budget for one thing and they fall short. And so every year they've been accumulating debt, and the debt has been accumulating. But there's no advancement, there's no development in Nevis. That has all been compromised because there's no fiscal space whatsoever for them to be able to maneuver in order to be able to deliver on these projects. Because the money is not there. Monies are barely enough to pay civil servants. As a matter of fact, the civil servants in Nevis, they're not even on par with the civil servants in St. Kitts, because at some point in St. Kitts they decided it is easier for people, the burden, they wanted to lighten the burden for civil servants, to pay them twice a month. That is just splitting your salary. It's not giving you anything extra. Splitting your salary in half, give you one half after maybe the first 2 weeks in the month, depending on how many weeks in the month, and give you the other half at the end of the month, just paying you twice. And the NIA has not had the fiscal space that they could even do that. So people in Nevis still have to wait a whole month before they can get their paycheck, which is already spent, and they start to borrow against the paycheck before they even get it. And so even in those small, initiatives, they couldn't carry out those in Nevis because this fiscal space is not there. We have a debt crisis. And I'm appealing to the people in Bastion, and that is where I think we left off. Start doing the responsible thing. You need to start giving Nevis the help that it needs, technical advice, albeit whatever it is, and get us to be able to consolidate some of the loans that we have, or whatever help that could be extended at this point in time. Whatever organization we need to raise, we need to involve, we need to do that. Because the people in Nevis deserve a break. We deserve a break from this NIA, this CCM NIA, really. And so just by trying to, I can't call it any differently, because that is just the way it seems to us here, and it at least seems to me, is that we're trying to, I want to be politically correct, but Dr. J, you got to do better than that. You can't be propping up the Mr. Brantley anymore. He has done too much damage to the fiscal integrity of the NIA. And it's about time that you stop propping him up and let him just sink as he should and get out of here, because we need a turnaround, and it's not going to happen under him. He created the problem. He is not likely to reverse it, because now we are hearing about more spending, more travel and subsistence. In August, he couldn't find monies to do basic things in Culturama, but at the end of August, he can find money to go travel, to get traveling and subsistence. That is just not right.
Okay, we're going to switch gears as we make our way up to 10 o'clock.
Here's something.
The party leader has asked me to let everyone know that she will be appearing on Freedom Radio Issues program this Wednesday. So make sure you tune into that to hear from the party leader. Now we're going to talk. Let's try and take this caller. No, the caller is gone, I think. Sorry about that. So we're going to talk about the World Bank Fair Share report. And let me set the backdrop to that. On February 6th at the round table, Prime Minister Drew announced that the long-awaited World Bank report had finally arrived in the Federation. That's 188 days ago, or 6 months and 24 days. Brantley received the report at the end of March. Of course, in March, he traveled to Abuja, Nigeria, with the Prime Minister, returned to the Federation on March 27th, and announced that he now has it in his possession. That's 133 days ago, or 5 months and change. Pat, I said that the place is very hot. But on the World Bank report, there's been very little sunshine from the federal government and from the NIA. It appears up to this point in time, no entity, no other group, not the rank and file of Kittitians and Nevisians, know what's in this World Bank report. Your thoughts on that?
Well, Steve, I've been very skeptical about the whole thing. At first, I was dismissing that they even got a report, and now we still can't see it, and I can't say that we have it. You know, but I'm concerned, and all of us ought to be concerned, because underpinning this whole thing is the status of the CBI. Because had it not been for the falling out over the CBI and how it was being shared, maybe, but then some people still don't believe that the whole drama over the mashing up the unity was really about fair share in any event. And so we would have gone through that. Mr. Brantley is responsible for where we are today, you know, and he demanded to have a, well, he said that sixth form should have been able to do it, so I don't think that he really was too pleased that it went to the World Bank, and now he's questioning the veracity of the information coming back from the World Bank, which doesn't sound good, you know, for a leader, you know, of a country or the island, you know, to make those kind of statements. You know, I think maybe, I don't know if maybe he retracted that already. He probably should have been asked to do so. But notwithstanding, it is clear to me that what was in the report was not favorable, not to Nevis, not favorable to St. Kitts. And so, yeah, and I said that because, like I said, I was looking at the CBI and the performance of the CBI the past couple of years after Brantley brought in the Mandy and mash it up. And so, when you look at it, if we look at how the CBI has been reported within recent times, and I think I alluded to that the last time I was here,
Yes,
in that the net, we're talking about the net flows from CBI now rather than the gross flows. If we could use that, it's going to look bad for Dr. Drew, that for the past couple of years, he might have been giving Brantley more than the 26% that is due to Nevis. And on the other hand, it's going to look bad, reflect bad on the Premier, Mr. Brantley, because he made a big song and dance about getting fair share without first applying himself to at least estimating what this fair share should be. He should have at least had an idea. If you're making noise for something, and you say that you're not getting what you should get, you should have an idea as to what you should get. So instead of him sitting down with his accountant, you know, and these guys, you know, they're bright, you know, Colin Doe is a bright fellow, you know, instead of them sitting down and looking at what the model was for sharing, which is in the Constitution, by the way, and I keep saying that, reminding us that the Constitution sets out a framework for the fair share of revenue, tax revenues. So if we are going to now deal with non-tax revenue, I would imagine that the foundation has already been laid, and we would use the same model in order for us to get the fair share of the non-tax revenue, which is what the CBI is all about. But CBI mash up and gone. But the Constitution still has in section 110 that on a population basis, there is the way that we should share the thing. So 26% for Nevis. So what is so hard in that? Mr. Brantley could have looked at what the Constitution said, and then the Constitution has a Schedule 10. This is an addendum, right? And what this speaks to, they set out a formula. Even for the people who don't really know maths and like maths, they sort of a simple formula. For the people who are home and you're hearing me, you can Google and get the Constitution for St. Kitts Nevis. Go to the Schedule 10, and it sets out the formula in that it has in there how much Nevis makes in taxes, how much St. Kitts make. Add them together. Out of the total, 26% goes to Nevis, 74% goes to St. Kitts. If, at the end of the day, Nevis would have collected less than the 26% that is due to them, St. Kitts would send over the little top-up. If Nevis would have collected more than the 26%, then they would send the balance to St. Kitts so they could make sure that they maintain their 74%. That's what we're talking about here. All right? Simple maths. However, the difficulty, I think, that Mr. Brantley might have encountered, having not applied himself to the formula to begin with anyway, is that he was just looking at what he was getting and not looking at his commitment to what are mutually beneficial programs or services for St. Kitts and Nevis. Now you have to contribute. If me and you live in the house together and bills are to be paid, and you're not using electricity, man, you have to pay your share, and I pay my share. But he was not going to have a difficult time in terms of extracting the information that is there, collating it, and seeing how much he's likely to pay, because the schedule sets out what are the common services. And if you have issues with the common services, all you have to do is have a conversation with the Governor General and say, look, I'm not so comfortable with this or that. And so let me just give people an idea as to what the common services are that Nevis was really expected to contribute to. That means that would have come out of what Nevis is due. So if Nevis is due $25, their share of the common services had to go towards maintaining the Governor General, and this is something that happened since the inception. Since 1983, when we got independence, the Governor General, a percentage, we had to contribute 10% to that office. The fact that we now have a Deputy Governor General, mind you, I don't know how that split works, but if there's a question to be raised, there's an avenue for that. You know, you can raise a question. You're not just sitting and bound to these things without having the ability or the right to question. In Parliament, it is on a proportion of the population. The Premier likes to use fancy terms in the pro rata basis. That is what it means. So 26% of the costs of Parliament, that is in St. Kitts, we would contribute towards that. Defense is on the same basis, proportion of the population, 26%. Foreign affairs, regional and foreign contributions. So our participation in CARICOM, we have to pay. It's almost like you have to pay your dues. CARICOM, the OECS, whatever other organizations that help us and we are part of and we signed on to, once they require some level of monetary engagement that is done on our behalf, we got to pay 26% of that. That is fair. I mean, we never questioned it before. This is not the time necessarily, I think, to question that. We pay, we pay. Telephone, that is a non-issue because we have transitioned away from owning a telephone company, and so we don't have to deal with that. Radio and TV might be an issue that might be a sticking point because we already have a duplication over here. The NIA now has Nevis TV, television, and so ZIZ, I don't think it's fair that we have to contribute to ZIZ. I think that's a wash. You pay for your ZIZ, we pay for NTV, because I'm hardly on ZIZ. I've never been afforded the opportunity to go on ZIZ. Not that they say you can't come, but for me it's an inconvenience. I would rather use NTV, Nevis NTV. So I think that in itself is a wash, but if we were to share or pay our portion, it would just be on the pro rata basis on the population, the size of the population, for which we are 26%. The government printry, I get my things from the government printry, I get my gazettes from the government printry, that has to be paid for. I see things inside there when the Premier goes off on his vacations, or when he leaves Eric in charge, or Bran, or whomever, it goes in the printry. That is a service that is provided on behalf of not just St. Kitts, the federal government, but the NIA as well. So we have to pay 26% of the cost for maintaining the printry. Passenger vessel, there was a period of time when we owned Caribbean Queen, right, and whatever came before that belonged to the government, that no longer persists. So we can tick that off and say, at least draw a line through that and say that is something we're not committed to paying. That's an expense that we get away from. The technical college, we use the technical college. All they're asking is that we pay 10%. Maybe we have 10% population over there in the student body. I don't know what size we have, but we're committed to paying 10% of the fees related to the technical college. The teachers training college, that's where our teachers get trained. We have to, and it is required here, it is stipulated here in the Constitution that Nevis must pay 30%. This is a little above what the norm is in terms of the proportion of the population, but we're required to pay 30% towards the teachers college. The JNF France Hospital, that's a wash. That, I don't think that was They had a 5% that we were contributing to whatever loans would have been taken for the upgrade there. I think that is something that we can argue against, that we don't have to pay. Miscellaneous development project, whatever that was, I think that those probably would have expired in terms of, I think that by now, those loans would have been repaid. And so, that leaves us with the Golden Rock Airport, which we use.
Golden Rock?
It was the Golden Rock Airport, I beg your pardon, but it was stipulated here as the Golden Rock Airport because at the time of independence, that is what the name of the airport in St. Kitts was. And so whatever loans they had for the upgrade or whatever, we were committed to a minuscule number, just 5% of paying back that, but I would imagine that those have expired, they would have already been paid for. Likewise, the Deepwater Port, we have our own Deepwater Port over here, so we can argue against that. And so these are some of the things that, if the Premier was minded, should have sat down and made these calculations because he could find them in budgets. All this information is information that if he had asked me, I could have found it for him because I'm retired, and I had the extra time on my hand. I said to him, if you need help, I'm right over the defense line, because we're neighbors. And he has not extended, the invitation for me to help. But now I'm hearing that he's saying that NRP not helping him fight for fair share. And he himself cannot identify for us, what is your fair share? You need to know what your fair share, what are you going to battle with you for? And you don't know what you're getting. But the difficulty for him now is that he has focused exclusively, tunnel vision on the CBI. And that is what is sinking the CCM NIA right now. Because they made a big song and dance about wanting fair share. And when you speak to them, the only reference point they have for fair share is the CBI. Now the CBI has taken a dive. If we were to believe everything that we hear on social media, I would have heard a gentleman on a podcast saying that for the first half of 2025, the CBI would have had only 250 applicants for the CBI program. Now, if you calculate that by $50,000, which is what I think the processing fees are, then that would bring in, for the first half of this year, only $12.5 million. Now, if only $12.5 million came in, and that is the gross, and we're seeing that they're now reporting the returns after they would have taken out about 1/3 of that. Now, 1/3 of that is telling me about $4 million left. So if CBI receipts would have only returned the net just $4 million up to this point in the first half of 2025, if this pattern holds, let's say for generosity's sake, we give you another performance like the first half of the year, and we say, you get an next 250 applicants for the latter part of the year, then it means that overall we're talking about sharing $8 million between St. Kitts and Nevis. Nevis is going to get 26% of $8 million. Now you do the maths. 26% of 8 is like 8 twice 8 is 16. Less than $2 million. That is less than $2 million that we're going to be fighting for. And so what it looks like here, and I've said it before, is that the dog dropped the bone. Mr. Brantley was running along with a $66 million bone in him out. But I don't think he ravenous, because I really don't think that the whole thing was about fair share to begin with. But if I were to consider that point and say it was about fair share, it means that Mr. Brantley had a golden bone of $66 million in his mouth. Every year he was going to get that. And he dropped it for a bone in the water that is going to return to him that is only of the value of $2 million. Now tell me that makes sense. It makes no sense. And what he has put us through, just for that, on the principle, we have seen people who resign, or heads of state, who have resigned for less than that. And this pickle that Mr. Brantley has put us in, instead he just resigned and make the thing easy. Well, in terms of the transition, because ultimately people are going to have it. Well, people have had enough. If people ain't coming to your party, you mean they ain't gonna come to your funeral? And so he would have. I think he would have overspent his hand as it relates to the support he had in Nevis. And it's time for him to go. I don't know why he's making it this traumatic for us. It's time for him to leave, because he's going to leave with a legacy that says he focused only on looking good and having a grand time while Nevis suffered.
I didn't mean to take you over time because I know you've had such a difficult day. We won't be taking any more calls. Won't be taking... Well, Pat insists.
That's your prerogative.
No, let's take the caller. Caller, you're the last caller for the evening.
Yeah, good night to the listening public.
Hey, good night.
Good night.
The nigger man, they bring hundreds of people from the road at a time, you know. What's the thing? Because when you sit down and think about it, right? These hundreds of people he brought from the road. What's for nothing? We got a reason to go on the road now. We have a reason to go on the road. Nevis people, 6.5 people. We get the man out in there. Good night.
Hi, good night. So Dr. Bartlett has brought us back to our childhood, the story of the dog and the bone. And I know you could have gone on for a long, long time, but...
Well, I apologize for running over time. I got a little carried away there. But it is something that, I feel strongly about. With Nevisians should not be at this point. We should not have been at this point, not with the millions of dollars that came, from the same CBI.
Mm-hmm.
We were being pampered, as a matter of fact, because at that time people were just looking at the gross returns and not on the net. People were not, looking at, what we owe. They were just paying our share for us, and then, for him to just overturn everything without studying the issue. That is why I'm so disappointed. And he has people around him who could do bats.
Dr. Bartlett, you created history tonight. You're the first politician in the history of our independent nation who has taken time to outline that section of the Constitution to all our listeners, to let us know that, as you said, if you're living in the house, you have to help pay for the electricity. For all the programs we've heard from the other side in Nevis, that had never, ever been spelled out. So it's good. Great elucidation for the people. And of course, as you've always said, the Constitution is available online, and people should definitely take more time to look into it, to understand the complicated arrangements that we have between the islands of St. Kitts and Nevis. Of course, we've had that Constitution for 42 years. And as you've heard so often, even from the politicians, not even a comma or a full stop has been changed.
Unfortunately.
It's 7 minutes past 10. We'll go, but another reminder. The party leader will be appearing on Issues on Freedom Radio on St. Kitts on Wednesday. The caller from Montserrat says, this is where political debate in the Federation and maybe in the Eastern Caribbean reaches its apex. There's no program like Your Voice with the NRP. We'll be back next week. Good night.
Your Voice with the NRP. This and every Monday, 8:30 to 10 p.m. Join host Stephen Semanas and the NRP candidates as they amplify your voice.
You're listening to 2020 Vision Radio. We can be found on www.2020visionradio.com.